In the vast expanse of the Catherine Nebula, where dying stars cast their final light across forgotten worlds, legends speak of the last albino dragon, a creature of pure starlight and ancient fury, chained for crimes it never committed. The Galactic Dominion believed they had contained the ultimate weapon, but they never counted on humanity's greatest strength, the refusal to abandon those who suffer alone. When Sergeant Marcus Chin's damaged vessel crashes on the prison moon of Vorthak Prime, he discovers that sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones who have given up hope. And sometimes the most human thing you can do is show a dragon how to rage against the chains that bind them both. The emergency beacon screamed through the void as Sergeant Marcus Chin fought to keep his dying ship from becoming another piece of space debris. The Terran Federation vessel, Defiant Hope, shuddered around him, hull plates groaning under stress as the navigation systems flickered between red warnings and complete darkness. 3 days ago, he had been leading a reconnaissance mission near the Catherine Nebula. Now, he was about to crash on a moon that officially did not exist. Marcus gripped the manual controls with hands that bore the scars of a dozen battles. His left arm, more metal than flesh thanks to vegan plasma weaponry, sparked as he wrestled with the ship's trajectory. The prosthetic had saved his life during the siege of Proxima Station, but it had never quite felt like his own. Today, that might be exactly what he needed. The surface of Vorthak Prime rushed toward him through the viewport, a wasteland of obsidian cliffs and sulphurous valleys that stretched to a horizon painted in shades of amber and rust. Ancient structures dotted the landscape like broken teeth, their purpose lost to time and the Empire's selective memory. This was supposed to be a dead world, according to every star chart in Federation space. Dead worlds did not require prison facilities. The ship hit atmosphere with a sound like thunder being torn in half. Marcus felt the heat wash over him as the hull began to glow cherry red. He counted seconds between lightning strikes, an old habit from his childhood on the storm-racked mining colony of New Colorado. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Impact. The world went black. Marcus awoke to the taste of copper and the distant sound of something massive breathing. His head pounded with each heartbeat, and when he tried to move, his body protested with a symphony of pain. The crash had thrown him against the navigation console, leaving a spider web of cracks across the reinforced glass. Emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie red glow, and somewhere in the ship's bowels, fires still burned. He checked his equipment with the methodical precision of a soldier who had seen too many battles. Combat armor, cracked but functional. Plasma rifle, destroyed in the crash. Sidearm, missing. Medical kit, intact. Water recycler, functional. Field rations, enough for maybe a week. It was not the worst situation he had faced, but it was close. The breathing sound came again, deeper this time, like the sigh of sleeping mountains. Marcus followed the sound through the twisted wreckage of his ship, stepping carefully over exposed power conduits and shattered hull plates. The breach in the forward compartment was large enough to walk through, and beyond it lay a world that defied every expectation. The air was breathable, if thin, with a metallic taste that reminded him of blood and lightning. Strange formations of crystalline rock jutted from the ground like frozen lightning, and in the distance, massive structures reached toward a sky the color of old brass. But what drew his attention was the sound, that rhythmic breathing that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath his feet. Marcus activated his helmet's recording function and began to explore. The Federation would want a full report, assuming he ever made it back to tell them about this place. The surface was more complex than it had appeared from orbit. Carved channels ran between the crystal formations, worn smooth by something that was definitely not wind or water. The channels led deeper into what appeared to be a vast complex of tunnels and chambers, all carved with the same fluid precision. As he followed the largest channel, the breathing sound grew stronger. With it came something else, a low, harmonic humming that seemed to resonate in his bones. It was not an unpleasant sound, but it was definitely not natural. Marcus had heard enough alien vocalizations during his military service to recognize intelligence when he heard it. The channel opened into a vast cavern that took his breath away. The ceiling stretched so high that his helmet lights could not reach it, and the walls were covered in formations that looked like frozen waterfalls made of silver and gold. But at the center of it all, surrounded by massive chains that seemed to be carved from single pieces of some dark metal, lay the source of the breathing. The dragon was larger than any creature Marcus had ever seen, easily the size of Federation heavy cruiser. Its scales were pure white, but not the white of snow or bone. They seemed to contain their own light, like captured starfire. The creature's head was lower to the ground, eyes closed, and each breath sent small whirlwinds of dust and debris swirling through the cavern. The chains were clearly not ornamental. They were massive, each link the size of Marcus himself, and they pulsed with a faint energy that made his skin crawl. Whatever those chains were made of, they were designed to hold something that could level cities. The dragon's wings, folded against its body, showed signs of damage where the chains had worn against them over time. This creature had been here for a very long time. Marcus approached slowly, his remaining weapons ready but not drawn. Military training warred with human curiosity as he studied the sleeping giant. There were no guards, no monitoring equipment that he could see. Either the dragon was considered completely contained, or its captors were confident that no one would ever find this place. The dragon's breathing changed, becoming shallower, and one enormous eye opened. It was the color of liquid silver, ancient and intelligent and utterly alien. For a long moment, human and dragon regarded each other across the cavern. Marcus felt a pressure in his mind, not hostile, but questioning, as if the creature was trying to understand what he was. When the dragon spoke, its voice resonated through the cavern like distant thunder. The words were not in any language Marcus recognized, but somehow he understood them anyway. The meaning seemed to bypass his ears entirely and speak directly to his mind. Another comes to gawk at the chained beast, the dragon said, and there was infinite weariness in those words. How long has it been since the last one? Years? Decades? Time flows strangely when one cannot see the stars. Marcus found his voice, though it sounded small in the vast space. I'm not here to gawk. My ship crashed. I am Sergeant Marcus Chun of the Terran Federation. The silver eye blinked slowly. Human, the dragon said, and there was something like surprise in the word. It has been a very long time since I have spoken with a human. I am Siltharian, last of the stellar drakes, bound here by those who fear what they cannot understand. How long have you been chained here? Marcus asked, stepping closer despite every instinct screaming at him to retreat. Long enough to see empires rise and fall. Long enough to forget the taste of freedom. Siltharian's head lifted slightly, chains clanking with the movement. The Galactic Dominion placed these bonds upon me when I refused to serve as their weapon against smaller worlds. They claimed I was too dangerous to be free, too powerful to be destroyed. So they chained me here on this forgotten moon and told the galaxy I was dead. Marcus studied the chains more closely. The metal was unfamiliar, but the energy patterns were similar to Federation quantum restraints, just far more advanced. What would happen if someone were to remove these chains? Many would die, Siltharian said simply. The Dominion has convinced the galaxy that I am a monster, a creature of mindless destruction. If I were free, they would send their fleets to ensure I was properly destroyed this time. And are you? A monster, I mean. The dragon's laugh was like distant thunder. I'm what I have always been, a guardian of small worlds, a protector of those too weak to protect themselves. But power, true power, is always seen as monstrous by those who lack it. Marcus circled the chains, his engineer's mind automatically cataloging stress points and potential weaknesses. The Federation had taught him to think tactically, to see every problem as having a solution. The Dominion is at war with my people. They have been conquering human colonies, enslaving entire populations. Yes, Sultharian said, closing his eye again. I have felt their ships passing overhead, heard their transmissions echoing through the quantum foam. The pattern is always the same: expand, conquer, control. It is what they did to my people long ago. Your people, the stellar drakes, once numbered in the thousands. We traveled between stars as easily as walking, protecting worlds that could not protect themselves. The Dominion offered us partnership, then betrayal when we refused to become their weapons. They hunted us to extinction, one by one, until only I remained. There was pain in those words, the deep ache of the last of the species. Marcus stood before the great head, close enough to see his reflection in the silver eye. My ship is damaged, but not destroyed. If I could repair it, if I could get word back to the Federation about this place. They would come, Sultharian said. Your Federation, the Dominion, others. They would fight over me like scavengers over carrion. Nothing would change. Maybe, or maybe things could be different this time. Marcus placed his hand against the nearest chain, feeling the energy pulse through the strange metal. My people have a saying, no one fights alone. We have never been the strongest or the most advanced species, but we have something the Dominion does not. We know how to work together. Pretty words, human. But I have heard pretty words before from species that claim to be different. They all sought to use me in the end. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking of the colonies he had seen burned, the families torn apart by Dominion expansion. What if I could prove that humans are different? What if I could show you that some of us fight not for conquest, but for something better? Sultharian's eye opened again, focusing on the scarred human before him. And how would you do that, little warrior? Give me time to repair my ship and contact my people. Let me show you what humans do when they find someone chained and abandoned. Marcus met the dragon's gaze without flinching. We do not leave them behind. The dragon was silent for so long that Marcus began to wonder if he had made a mistake. When Sultharian finally spoke, there was something different in his voice. Not hope exactly, but perhaps the memory of what hope had once felt like. Very well, Marcus Chun of Terra. I will give you time. But know this, if you betray that trust, if you prove to be like all the others, I will ensure that your death is swift. It is the only mercy I have left to give. Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of the promise he was making. As he turned to head back toward his crashed ship, Sultharian's voice followed him through the cavern. Human, it has been 13,412 standard years since I was chained here. I remember this number because I count each day, hoping that one of them will bring change. Do not make me count many more. Walking back through the crystal formations under an alien sky, Marcus Chun began a plan. He had repaired ships under fire before, had jury-rigged communication systems from spare parts and determination. But this was different. This time, he was not just trying to save himself. He was trying to save something far more precious and dangerous than he had ever imagined. The breathing sound followed him across the wasteland, a reminder that somewhere in the darkness below, the last dragon in the universe was learning, once again, to hope. Marcus worked by the light of his ship's failing emergency systems, his prosthetic arm moving with mechanical precision as he rerouted power conduits and bypassed damaged circuits. 3 days had passed since his first encounter with Sultharian, and each night he had returned to the cavern to share his progress and listen to stories of a galaxy that had existed before the Dominion's rise to power. The dragon spoke of worlds where multiple species lived in harmony, of trade networks that spanned entire star clusters without the need for conquest or subjugation. Marcus found himself looking forward to these conversations, despite the constant reminder that he was talking to a being capable of turning planets into asteroid fields. There was something fundamentally lonely about Sultharian, something that resonated with Marcus's own experiences as a soldier far from home. The hypercom array should be operational within another day, Marcus reported as he settled into his usual spot near the dragon's massive head. Federation encryption will make it difficult for the Dominion to intercept, but once I send the signal, they'll know something is happening here. And what will you tell them? Soltharian asked, the question carrying weight that had been building over their conversations. Marcus had been considering that very question. The truth, that I found you, that you've been imprisoned here against your will, and that you might be willing to help us against the Dominion. Might be willing. The dragon's voice held a note of amusement. Such careful words, human. You could simply tell them you found a weapon of unimaginable power, and leave the moral complexities for others to sort out. I could, but that would make me like them, wouldn't it? Marcus leaned back against a crystal formation, feeling the smooth surface cool against his armor. My people have a concept called informed consent. It means you have the right to know what you're agreeing to before you agree to it. An interesting concept. The Dominion preferred to simply take what they wanted and justify it afterward. Soltharian shifted slightly, the massive chains clinking with the movement. Tell me, Marcus Chun, what do you believe your Federation would do with me if they could remove these bonds? It was a question Marcus had wrestled with since his first day here. Honestly, I do not know. Some would want to study you, others would want to use you as a weapon. But there would also be those who would fight for your right to choose your own path. And which group would prevail? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. That would depend partly on you. If you helped us willingly, as an ally rather than a weapon, it would be harder for the extremists to justify treating you as property. An ally. Soltharian seemed to taste the word. When was the last time someone offered me alliance rather than servitude? Before your species discovered fire, I think. The conversation was interrupted by a sound that made Marcus's blood freeze, the whine of approaching atmospheric engines. He scrambled to his feet, activating his helmet's sensor array. 3 ships were descending toward the moon's surface, their configuration marking them as Dominion patrol vessels. They found us, Marcus said, checking his weapons and finding them still inadequate. No, Soltharian said, his mental voice taking on a different quality. They have come for their scheduled inspection. They visit every few years to ensure I remain properly contained. Marcus felt his heart sink. How long do we have? Minutes. They will land near your vessel first. It is the most obvious sign that something has changed. The dragon's eye opened, focusing on the human with an intensity that was almost physical. You must choose, Marcus Chun. Hide and hope they do not find you, or trust that your words about human nature were more than empty promises. The sound of landing engines grew louder, echoing through the crystalline formations. Marcus made his choice with the clarity that only comes in moments of absolute crisis. He activated his helmet's recording function and began running toward his ship, broadcasting on all Federation emergency frequencies. This is Sergeant Marcus Chun, service number 77 Alpha 92, broadcasting Mayday from coordinates. He rattled off the location as he ran, praying that somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, someone was listening. I have made contact with an imprisoned stellar drake on the Dominion prison moon of Vorthak Prime. The creature is being held against its will and may be willing to assist Federation forces. Requesting immediate support, operational priority maximum. He reached his ship just as the first Dominion soldiers began emerging from their landing craft. They were Vorthak, 7-foot-tall humanoids with natural armor plating and the temperament of angry rhinoceros. Their leader, identifiable by the gold trim on his armor, spotted Marcus immediately and barked orders in the harsh Dominion trade language. Marcus raised his hands, his mind racing through possible scenarios. Fighting was out of the question. He was outnumbered and outgunned. Running would only delay the inevitable. That left talking, something he had never been particularly good at when people were pointing weapons at him. I am a Federation citizen, he said in clear galactic standard. My ship suffered mechanical failure and crashed here. I claim protection under interstellar salvage law. The Vorthak commander laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Federation dog, you are on Dominion territory. Your laws have no power here. He gestured to his troops, who began advancing with weapons raised. You'll come with us for questioning. As the soldiers closed in, Marcus heard something that changed everything. The sound of massive chains beginning to move. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and from somewhere in the distance came a sound like controlled thunder. The Vorthak commander's confident expression faltered as he recognized what he was hearing. "Impossible," the commander whispered. "The beast is secure. The chains cannot be broken." The sound grew closer, and Marcus realized what was happening. Siltharion was not breaking the chains. He was moving as far as they would allow, bringing himself closer to the surface. The dragon's mental voice touched Marcus's mind, calm, but carrying an undertone of barely controlled fury. "Tell them, human. Tell them what I have told you about choice." Marcus stepped forward, drawing himself to his full height despite the weapons trained on him. "The dragon is not your property. It never was. You chained a sapient being for refusing to be your weapon, and you have held it prisoner for over 13,000 years. The beast is a weapon of mass destruction," the commander snarled. "It must be contained for the safety of all civilized species." "According to who?" "You? The same civilization that has spent centuries conquering and enslaving anyone weaker than yourself." Marcus felt anger building in his chest, anger for every colony that had been burned, every family that had been torn apart. "Siltharion protected smaller worlds from aggressors like you. That is why you chained it. Not because it was dangerous, but because it was dangerous to you." The ground shook again, more violently this time. Cracks appeared in the crystalline formations, and one of the Vorthak soldiers stumbled. The commander's weapon swung between Marcus and the source of the disturbance. "Even if what you say is true, it changes nothing. The beast will remain chained, and you will be taken for interrogation." "Will I?" Marcus asked, and he was surprised to find himself smiling. "Tell me, Commander, how many ships do you have in orbit?" 3 heavy cruisers and a command vessel. More than enough to deal with any Federation rescue attempt. "Federation ships, yes. But what about stellar drakes?" The commander's expression changed as Marcus's meaning became clear. "The beast is chained. It cannot reach orbit." "Cannot reach orbit while chained, you mean?" "But chains can be broken, Commander. And if they were to break, if Siltharion were to be free, how long do you think your ships would survive against something that can move between stars under its own power?" The Vorthak commander raised his weapon, pointing it directly at Marcus's chest. "You are bluffing, human. Even if the chains could be broken, you would not dare. The beast would turn on you as quickly as it would turn on us." Marcus heard the sound of approaching ships, different engines this time, with the characteristic whine of Federation drives pushed beyond their safe limits. His mayday had been heard, and help was coming. But would it arrive in time? "You want to know the difference between humans and Dominion species?" Marcus asked, taking a step forward despite the weapon aimed at him. "We make allies, not slaves. We offer partnership, not servitude. And when we find someone chained and abandoned, we do not leave them to rot." The ground erupted. Siltharion burst from the crystalline formations with a roar that shattered stone and sent the Vorthak soldiers stumbling. The dragon was still chained, but it had used every inch of slack to bring itself to the surface. Its massive head rose above them like a living mountain, silver eyes blazing with fury that had been building for millennia. When the dragon spoke, its voice carried across the entire moon, reaching every ship in orbit and every soul on the surface. "I am Siltharion, last of the stellar drakes, and I have been patient long enough. Release me, or face the consequences of your ancestors' crimes." The Vorthak commander's weapon trembled in his hands as he looked up at the towering figure above him. The chains will hold." "Will they?" Siltharion asked, and began to pull. The sound was indescribable, metal stress beyond its breaking point, energy discharges that turned the air itself into plasma, and underneath it all, the voice of a creature that had been denied freedom for longer than most civilizations had existed. The chains held, but barely, and with each surge of the dragon's strength, they glowed brighter and showed new stress fractures. Federation ships descended through the atmosphere, their hulls scarred from running battles with Dominion forces. Marcus counted at least 6 vessels, led by what looked like a heavy cruiser. The cavalry had arrived, but they were still outnumbered by the Dominion forces in orbit. "This is Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Federation vessel Indomitable," came a transmission on all frequencies. "All Dominion forces are ordered to withdraw immediately. Any attempt to harm the Federation citizen on the surface will be met with extreme prejudice." The Vorthack commander snarled, caught between the fury of his superiors and the reality of his situation. "Your Federation dogs are outnumbered 3-1, Admiral. Surrender now, and we will make your deaths quick." "Counter-proposal," Admiral Martinez replied, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had commanded fleets through impossible situations. "You release our people and withdraw from this system, and we do not tell the galaxy what you've been hiding on this moon." Marcus watched the commander's expression change as he realized the implications. The existence of a living stellar drake would send shockwaves through galactic politics. More importantly, it would raise questions about what other extinct species the Dominion might have secretly imprisoned. "The beast is contained," the commander said, but his voice lacked conviction. Above them, Siltharion continued to strain against the chains, each movement bringing them closer to their breaking point. "For now," Admiral Martinez agreed. "But chains to be broken, Commander. And when they are, whose side do you think Siltharion will choose? Those who kept it prisoner, or those who offered it freedom?" The standoff stretched for long moments, tension building like a storm about to break. Marcus found himself holding his breath, aware that the next few seconds could determine the fate of entire worlds. It was Siltharion who broke the silence, the dragon's voice carrying a note of grim amusement. "Commander Vextar of the 47th Subjugation Fleet, I remember you. You were there when they first brought me to this place, a young officer eager to prove himself to his superiors. Do you remember what I told you then?" The Vorthack commander, Vextar, stepped backward, his weapon forgotten. "That is impossible. You have been unconscious for most of your imprisonment. I remember every face, every word, every cruelty inflicted upon me during my captivity. I told you that chains break, Commander. I told you that dragons have long memories. Did you think 13,000 years would dull my recall?" Vextar looked around desperately, realizing that his situation had moved far beyond simple military tactics. He was facing a creature that remembered his ancestors' crimes with perfect clarity, supported by a Federation fleet that had risked everything to answer a single soldier's call for help. "Choose, Commander," Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "Will you be remembered as the Vorthack who finally made peace with the dragons, or as the fool who started a war he could never win?" The chains groaned again, stress fractures spreading along their length like silver veins. Siltharion's eyes never left the Dominion commander as the dragon spoke one final time. "I grow weary of this conversation, Commander Vextar. Will you remove these chains willingly, or shall I remove them myself?" The moment stretched like a bowstring about to snap. Commander Vextar stood frozen between his orders and his survival instincts, while above him Siltharion gathered power that made the very air around them crackle with potential energy. Marcus could feel it in his bones. The dragon was preparing to break free whether the chain survived or not. The decision came from an unexpected source. One of the younger Vorthack soldiers stepped forward, removing his helmet to reveal features scarred by plasma burns. "Commander," he said in accent of galactic standard, "we have families on the outer worlds. If the Federation record is correct, this creature has never attacked civilian populations." Vextar whirled on his subordinate. "Silence. You forget yourself, Sergeant." "No, sir. I remember myself." The young soldier looked up at Siltharion with something that might have been awe. "My grandfather told stories of the stellar drakes before the Ministry of Truth declared them classified. He said they were guardians, not destroyers. Your grandfather was a fool who believed enemy propaganda." Admiral Martinez's voice cut through their argument with surgical precision. "Commander Vextar, I am reading massive energy buildups in orbit. Your ships are charging weapons. I strongly advise against any aggressive action. Marcus looked up as the sky began to glow with the distinctive light of space-to-surface weapons preparing to fire. The Dominion had made their choice. They intended to destroy the moon rather than risk Siltharian's freedom. It was a typically brutal solution, but one that would eliminate all evidence of their crimes. They mean to kill us all, Marcus said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. Everyone on the surface, Federation and Dominion alike. Vexstar's communicator crackled with orders from orbit. Surface team, withdraw immediately. Orbital bombardment commences in 60 seconds. The Vorthack commander looked up at his ships, then at the Dragon still straining against its chains. For the first time since the confrontation began, Marcus saw genuine fear in the alien's eyes. They cannot. My troops are still on the surface. Acceptable losses, came the cold reply from orbit. The security risk must be eliminated. Siltharian's laughter was like thunder rolling across mountains. How little they have changed. The Dominion has always been willing to sacrifice their own people to maintain control. The Dragon's head turned toward the sky, silver eyes, tracking movements too distant for organic vision to detect. 47 seconds until their weapons achieve firing solution. Time enough, I think. The chains began to sing, a high, harmonic note that seemed to come from the metal itself as Siltharian gathered power that had been building for 13 millennia. The sound grew louder, more complex, until it became a symphony of stress and impending destruction. Everyone take cover. Admiral Martinez's voice boomed from the Federation ships as they began moving into defensive positions. But Marcus found himself running toward the Dragon instead of away. Siltharian, if you break those chains now, you will be free just in time to die under orbital bombardment. Perhaps, the Dragon replied, never stopping his efforts. But I will die free, and that is worth any price. No. Marcus reached the base of the nearest chain and began examining its anchor point with desperate intensity. There has to be another way. You said these chains have quantum locks. What would happen if someone disrupted them from this end? The energy release would likely kill anyone within 100 meters, Siltharian said matter-of-factly. The quantum field collapse alone would be sufficient to reduce a human to component atoms. But it would free you faster than breaking them through force. Yes, but the Dragon's mental voice stopped as he understood what Marcus was contemplating. No, human. I will not accept that sacrifice. Marcus was already working, using his prosthetic arm's built-in tools to access the chain's control matrix. The Federation had taught him about quantum locks during his advanced demolitions training. They were virtually unbreakable from the outside, but catastrophically vulnerable to the right kind of interference from within. Marcus Chun. Siltharian's voice carried a note of command that had once moved mountains. Step away from those controls. Sorry, Marcus said, not looking up from his work. I told you, humans do not leave people chained and abandoned. That includes leaving them to die just as they gain their freedom. Above them, the sky began to glow brighter as the orbital weapons reached full charge. Marcus could see Federation ships moving to intercept, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Even if they could prevent some shots from reaching the surface, enough would get through to turn the entire moon into molten slag. 20 seconds to orbital bombardment, Admiral Martinez announced. All surface personnel prepare for immediate evacuation. The quantum locks interface was more complex than anything Marcus had encountered, but the basic principles were the same. Find the right frequency, introduce the right kind of interference, and hope the resulting explosion did not vaporize everything in the immediate area. His prosthetic arm sparked as he pushed its systems beyond their design limits, using the mechanical precision to manipulate controls meant for beings with far more delicate appendages. 15 seconds. Human, Siltharian said, and there was something new in his voice, not command but pleading. Your name was Marcus Chun. You served with honor. You showed kindness to a creature that had forgotten such things existed. Let that be enough. Not happening. Marcus replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked. You're going to live Siltharian. You're going to be free, and you're going to show the galaxy what a real guardian looks like. 10 seconds. The interface suddenly clicked into place, quantum frequencies aligning in a pattern that made Marcus's teeth ache. He could feel the massive power contained within the chains beginning to resonate, building toward a cascade failure that would either free the dragon or kill them all in the attempt. 5 seconds. Marcus looked up at Siltharian one last time, meeting those ancient silver eyes with a smile. Take care of yourself, old friend. And remember, not all chains are made of metal. He triggered the cascade failure just as the first orbital bombardment struck the far side of the moon. The explosion was beyond description, not just sound and light, but a fundamental disruption in the fabric of reality itself. Marcus felt his consciousness scatter across probability waves as the quantum locks collapsed in sequence, each failure triggering the next in a chain reaction that had been building for thousands of years. When awareness returned, he was lying on his back staring up at a sky filled with stars and the glow of distant battles. His body felt wrong, too light, too fragile, and when he tried to sit up, the world spun around him like a child's toy. Easy, Sergeant. The voice belonged to Dr. Lisa Park, the Federation's chief xenobiologist, and someone Marcus had never expected to see on a backwater moon at the edge of nowhere. You have been unconscious for 3 days. The quantum exposure should have killed you, but apparently your prosthetics absorb enough of the discharge to keep you among the living. Marcus managed to focus on her face, noting the wonder and barely controlled excitement in her expression. Siltharian? Free, Dr. Park said simply. The orbital bombardment never reached the surface. Something intercepted every shot, something moving faster than our sensors could track. Memory came flooding back, the chains falling away like broken cobwebs, the sound of massive wings catching starlight, and a mental voice filled with joy and terrible purpose. Marcus struggled to sit up, ignoring the protest from every nerve in his body. Where is he now? See for yourself. Dr. Park helped him to his feet and guided him to the entrance of what had been a medical tent, but was now more like a viewing platform. The sky above Vorthak Prime was filled with Federation ships, but they were no longer in combat formation. They floated peacefully alongside vessels Marcus did not recognize, sleek, organic shapes that seemed to be grown rather than built. And moving between them all, magnificent beyond description, was Siltharian. The dragon had grown during his captivity. Where once he had been the size of a cruiser, he now dwarfed the largest Federation dreadnought. His scales caught and reflected starlight like a living constellation, and when he moved, space itself seemed to bend around him. How many ships does he have with him? Marcus asked, watching the alien vessels with fascination. We are not entirely sure, Dr. Park admitted. They started arriving 6 hours after he was freed. Apparently, there are other survivors, not just stellar drakes, but dozens of species we thought were extinct. They've been hiding in the spaces between stars, waiting for a sign that the galaxy was ready for their return. Marcus watched as Siltharian approached one of the Federation vessels, his massive form dwarfing the ship as they engaged in what appeared to be detailed conversation. And the Dominion? In full retreat. Their orbital fleet jumped out of the system as soon as they realized what they were facing. Commander Vextar, he actually requested asylum, said his grandfather had been there when they first captured Siltharian, and that his family had carried the guilt ever since. The young soldier was right then. Some of them do remember the old stories. Dr. Park nodded. More than we thought. Admiral Martinez is reporting uprisings on a dozen Dominion worlds. Species that had been convinced they were alone are learning that their peoples survived in hidden communities. The political situation is changing by the hour. Marcus felt a familiar presence touch his mind, gentle but unmistakably powerful. Siltharian's mental voice carried warmth and something that might have been affection. Hello, little guardian. I was beginning to wonder if you would wake up in time to see the beginning. Beginning of what? Marcus asked aloud, drawing curious looks from the medical staff. The beginning of everything your people promised, Siltharion replied. Alliance instead of conquest. Partnership instead of slavery. Your Admiral Martinez has invited me to address your Federation Council, and I have accepted. Marcus smiled, imagining the chaos that announcement would cause in the halls of Federation power. They're going to want to study you, you know. Ask a million questions about your capabilities and your intentions. Let them ask. I have had 13,000 years to consider my answers. There was amusement in the dragon's voice, but something more serious underneath. Besides, I will not be going alone. The hidden peoples are ready to return to the galaxy. Marcus Chun. Your actions here have convinced them that perhaps this age will be different from the last. Through the tent's opening, Marcus could see alien ships arriving by the hour. Each vessel brought representatives of species that had vanished from galactic civilization millennia ago, choosing exile over extinction when the Dominion's expansion became unstoppable. They were returning now, drawn by the promise of something better. What happens next? Marcus asked, though part of him already knew the answer. Next, we build the future your people dreamed of, Siltharion said. A galaxy where strength protects rather than conquers, where wisdom guides rather than controls. It will not be easy. There are powers that benefit from the current darkness. But for the first time in centuries, we have something they cannot counter, which is hope, little guardian. We have hope and the will to fight for something better. Marcus walked outside, leaving the medical staff to their worried consultations. Above him, the sky was filled with ships from 100 worlds, crews, and commanders working together to plan a future none of them could have imagined just days before. At the center of it all, magnificent and free, flew the last dragon in the universe. No longer the last, but the first of a new age. From somewhere in the distance came the sound of Vorthack engineers working alongside Federation technicians. Former enemies united by the simple recognition that some things were more important than old grudges. There would be challenges ahead. The Dominion would not surrender its empire without a fight, and there were other powers in the galaxy that would see opportunity in the coming chaos. But for the first time since joining the Federation military, Marcus Chun felt genuinely optimistic about the future. They had something now that no army could defeat and no weapon could destroy. They had proof that the galaxy could be something better than an endless cycle of conquest and oppression. As he watched, one of the alien vessels began transmitting on open frequencies, its message carried in dozens of languages to every corner of known space, to all peoples who suffer under tyranny, to all worlds that live in fear of the strong, to all species that have been told they are weak and worthless. Hear this and know it to be true. The age of predators is ending. The Guardians have returned, and this time they are not alone. Marcus smiled and settled back to watch the sky fill with stars and hope. Somewhere among those ships was a dragon who had learned to trust again, and that was the most human victory of all. Not conquest, but connection. Not domination, but the simple recognition that no one should face the darkness alone. The future was beginning, and it was going to be magnificent.